Hi everyone, welcome back to the High Performance Reflections in aid of Tempestry Children's University Hospital. This week's guest is John Lacey. Johnny is a high performance coach for the Irish Rugby Football Union. Well known for his contributions and achievements as a rugby player, referee and coach, Johnny has enjoyed a successful career, having spells with Shannon, Munster and Ireland. As a player, Johnny built up an impressive list of achievements, including 5 All-Ireland Leagues, 4 Munster Senior Leagues, 8 Munster Senior Cups, and 2 Irish Interprovincial Rugby Championships. Following his retirement as a player, Johnny began refereeing games in the All-Ireland League before making his Celtic League debut in 2008. In 2010, Johnny made his debut as a Heineken Cup referee, becoming only the 3rd referee to both play and referee Heineken Cup matches. Johnny would go on to referee both the Pro 12 and European Challenge Cup finals. In 2012, he began refereeing top-level international games, taking charge of a match between France and Samoa at the Stade de France. In 2014, Johnny made his debut as a Six Nations referee, while also making his debut as a Rugby Championship referee in the same year. Before his retirement as a referee in 2018, Johnny served at the 2015 Rugby World Cup, taking charge of the bronze final between South Africa and Argentina. Most recently, Johnny was appointed the IRFU High Performance Coach and Talent Manager, where he continues to utilise his skills in high performance coaching and talent identification. So with that, I'm delighted to introduce you all to Johnny Lacey. Johnny, how are you?
Good evening, Peter. Thanks for having me on. Much appreciated. Nice to be here.
Great. Thanks a million for taking some time to join us and supporting what we're doing.
Pleasure.
So, sure, we'll jump into a few questions, so if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure, Peter. Yeah.
Great. So the first one I have for you, Johnny, is in your life and in your career and your bubble as it is, what does high performance look like for you?
I suppose, and thank you for the introduction. I suppose I work in a sporting environment, so obviously high performance in work and in sport can be slightly different, but a lot of similarities. That's the first thing I would say. In my world, I look after 5 professional referees made full-time by the IRFU in 2018. So the guys have an opportunity to be full-time and high-performing in training and learning every week on a full-time basis. We also have 4 high-performance development panel referees, which we hope by the structures that we have in place around our high-performing team, that some of these guys will become professional referees in the next 12 to 24 months, we hope, as certain referees, like in all sporting walks of life, people retire, move on, up-and-coming young blood is coming, which is a huge part of the organisation in the IRFU, that we develop a pathway for the future of Irish refereeing and try and keep it up as to the highest standards we can possibly give. So from that point of view, what are we looking for a high performance referee? Well, there's lots of well-known things out there, but strong decision makers, resilient, all the things that would be common traits in high performance. But we've also got a physical element to our high performance athlete, because obviously with the reffing professional rugby and the speed of the game and how fit and strong the players are on the pitch, we have to have a physical pillar, as we call it, that they can actually perform under pressure in a pressure situation with big stadiums and 30 guys going at each other hard, that you have the physical capabilities to be able to keep up with the game. So that's one huge area that is taken care of by our strength and conditioning team, but it is a very important part, because we're very lucky in the IRFU that we have a great strength and conditioning team, and we have a very fit nine referees at the moment. Outside of that, their ability to be coachable, so they can learn and get better, is hugely important. Obviously, refereeing is very important to say. It's not like any other job that people go into. You know, you don't get the criticism, the abuse when you go into an office environment that professional referees get on a week-to-week basis. So you've got to be a kind of a strong-willed character and be able to take that abuse that comes in all different shapes and forms now with social media, from the players, from the supporters that are in the stadium, and generally everywhere you go, a referee is got a tough job now, and especially in professional rugby where the stakes are so high. It's very important that the high performance referees are strong characters, to be able to take on criticism and go back into the coaching side of things. So our system would be that, for example, at the weekend, the referees would referee. I would watch the games at the weekend and do an evaluation on their performance, which on Monday they would get, because they all wanted it pretty much. People like feedback instantly. They want to be told they did well. They don't want to be told that they didn't go so well. But it's an important part of getting the feedback, processing it, giving time to absorb the actual feedback you're getting. And then on a Monday and a Tuesday, we would go into what's called a one-on-one with me personally, with that individual referee. And then on Tuesdays, we would have a group session where the whole high-performing team can learn from each other. So we've got Andy Brace, for example, our referee who's refereeing the Six Nations and went to the Rugby World Cup this year. And then we've 4 high-performing development guys. So we try and provide an environment that it's an open flow communication, that anybody can ask any questions, and they can feel safe there. And they take criticism in those, and they get criticized by me that that's a wrong decision. What are the learnings from that? And to be able to take on that is very, very important for them. Another part that I would find is very important in my own career that I'm trying to put into theirs is that the ability to get better at something week by week. Everybody's going to say a high performer, get better every day. And I agree with that, and that's absolutely fine. But how do you get better every day is more important to me than just saying we need to get better every day. So one of the things that I personally that worked for me, I suppose, was one of the areas that as a back, I didn't play in the scrum. So I needed to challenge and learn as much as I could around that, because that was the one area for me in refereeing that I needed to get better at week in, week out. So how do we provide an environment that's gonna work? So basically was going down to the Munster training sessions every Tuesday and Wednesday. Anthony Foley was a former, God rest him, a former playing colleague of mine, went on to coach, and I went down with Anthony. He wanted to ref at training sessions. I wanted to get better at scrum. So I was able to practice at a high performing level midweek before I went to referee a match. So what we do, and currently in this COVID situation, we had a lot of upskilling training, and I'll talk about that later on and what we did in that down period. But what we did at the moment is that we're watching the Super Rugby, and we have 2 weekly meetings. We'll review all the learnings, the good decisions, the bad decisions, with some new interpretations coming into the game. So we're kind of visually looking at the stuff at the moment. But most people learn from visual and then kinesthetic. So they actually have to go and look at how a bicycle is riding, then go out and try and ride the bicycle. So if you take that simple explanation, we're going into what I call phase 3 at the moment to get the referees ready for the 22nd of this month with Munster, Leinster and Ulster Connacht. So the guys are starting tomorrow and next week going into the 4 professional teams in Ireland, and they will work with the players on the new guidelines. They will ref scrums, lineouts, mauls, and basically get them match ready. So that is going to be a huge phase, and that's something that we are not making our referees do. That would be the wrong way to say it, because they want to go down there. Because if you have a bad day at the office as a referee, how do you practice? How do you be better next week? How do you perform better? How do you get the standards of your performance up? Well, you won't get it by looking at a video and writing down notes. Yes, that will help, but then you can go into a live environment where you can simulate as close as you possibly can to what comes to you on game day on a Saturday. So the lads will be going in twice a week, and obviously the teams are very much like having referees in, because the coaches then can coach, they can concentrate on what they are focusing on. We worry about the referee side of things, and we can get feedback. And also, when you're in a high-performing environment already, you just get absorbed into what the highest standards of an organisation are. The 4 organisations that we have in Ireland, in our 4 professional clubs, and I've been in all of them, are very, very professional, from S&C to coaching to players, and it just enhances that environment that when you go into an environment like that, you feel a bit of a lift. And if you can put yourself in that environment, for me, that's huge, Peter.
Yeah. I suppose there's, it's great to hear. It's great to hear such a detailed description of, what high performance is for ye and your team. And I suppose I'm going to throw it up now because it's kind of irrelevant, but the second question I had for you was around the factors, and you talked there around, the resilience and the communication, but also the structures that you had in place there to maintain that high performance level, and some of the tools and environments that you use to maintain that resilience and that performance, and and that atmosphere. So I suppose what I'm really curious about, Johnny, is some teams and some of our guests have talked about, their high performance being attached to winning. And then other teams have talked about their high performance being attached to doing the very best that they can do. So in the field of refereeing, like what is high performance in terms of outcomes? Is there, obviously referees can't win a game as such, but what is the high performance outcome for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. And referees, it's very, very important to them that they perform well. So to give it an example of what happens in terms of competitions and the factors that influence the performance and how it's all reviewed. And that's really important, because the review process we mentioned internally between ourselves, but we're also answerable to professional rugby competitions. So the 5 pros that the pro EPCR, which is the European Cup that people would be familiar with, and also World Rugby. So basically, if we ref in the Pro 14 every week, every game is analysed. Okay, so all the stats are there, the accuracy of the penalties that are given, and then the non-decisions of mistakes that referees didn't see during the game are all analysed. They're analysed by analysts within Pro 14 EPCR, but also I would analyse them with the referee manager of each of those. And that's how we decide whether one of our high performance referees is operating at the level that he should be. So we get a statistical analysis then on the scrums, the lineouts, the breakdown, the speed of the ball, the penalty accuracy, the ball in play time, and that's all on a platform that's available to the referee to see. So he's involved in that process. And I think that's a really, really important thing to say, because if they don't own their own performance, they won't see where they've got to improve week on week. So, as I said, on a Monday, that information comes. If the guys ref at the weekend, we digest that information. I do the one-on-ones with each of the refs myself, and then we have a call with whatever tournament later in the week, and the guy's performance will be, I won't say graded, but it will be, an arrow up or an arrow across, or what he's got to work on over the next couple of weeks. So, and that for me is key, because if I want these high performance reps to be better next week and the week after, and over a season maybe for some of the guys, we need to know where the weak points are, because we're trying to eliminate the areas of the game that they're not reffing well. And it's really important for me, if they're very good at refereeing certain areas, that they continue to be very good at those, and not just focus on one area of the game that they're bad, and then let the things that they're very good at, because they wouldn't have got to this level of refereeing if they weren't very good in the first place. So there's lots of really good stuff that they do. So keep the good stuff going well, and improve the stuff that needs to be worked on. And that's a challenge every week. But the ones that really work on those areas week on week. And I'm very lucky. I have 5 full-timers that are very, very hard workers and are very critical. Probably referees, unlike, are very, very critical on themselves.
Yeah.
They try and get every decision right in the game. And believe you me, it's impossible with the speed and the dynamic of rugby now. But the ones that are trying to get to perfection are trying to push the bar higher and higher and higher. And I think that's what you got to do. I think someone said, if you want to really succeed at something, you got to be a little bit obsessed about it.
Yeah.
And I love that, because I suppose we're very lucky that we work in sport, but we are obsessed with it. You know, we watch all the other games, we watch all the other referees, and you have to watch as much as you possibly can, because it increases your memory of stuff that happens and pictures that you're trying to develop, that we're doing at the moment because we can't ref matches at the moment. So we're watching a lot of it. And, you know, as I said to you, the guys will be getting onto the pitch now, and that will give them another opportunity to push the level of performance when they get to ref in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear, you know, what level of, you know, KPI analysis you do, you know, that the referees have such clear and measurable key performance indicators, because I think people just assume that teams are the only people that have like statisticians looking at stats for them. And it's really interesting to hear that from a referee's point of view, because from my point of view, absolutely, a referee is no different to a player in terms of, you know, his athleticism and what he needs to get from the game. But just, I suppose, to touch on that, I'm curious, you know, yourself as a referee, you know, having refereed at the very highest level possible, what makes up a good referee outside of the statistical stuff and outside of the measurements, like personality wise, what makes up a good referee?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you say that, because a former playing colleague of mine, Dr. Ian Sherwin, we're currently doing a study at the moment on referee communication in University of Limerick. It's never been done before. I believe it's a huge part of a referee being operating at the highest level of the game, because, you know, when I started refereeing, yeah, your game might be on TV or it mightn't be, you know, there wasn't as many televised games. But now, if you're a rookie player, you go out and you've got 14 other teammates to mind you. You go out now as a referee and you're analysed in your first game because it's on TV. You know, and it's very unfair, because people will form an opinion of the referee immediately. God, he's a terrible referee. But he needs an opportunity to develop over time. So these guys need time. But communication for me is absolutely critical. So we got all their games analysed, 5 games on each of the 5 referees, and 3 master students have analysed the communication behaviours. There's 23 of them in total, but we've narrowed it down to 9 that the referees use most in the game. So that's the first phase of the research. So we can say, guys, the types of communication that they're using in a match, because if you're trying to control the highest level of rugby players on a pitch, you need to be a very good communicator. You need to know the detail of what you're talking about in terms of the reason for that penalty. It needs to make sense. So if you give a penalty and it doesn't make sense to the players, they won't give you the respect that you want to in a game. So we're big in detail. You know, everything you say and do is about detail. The smallest things, because you get the detail right, players will follow you. You know, of course they'll disagree with you at times, but if you can make understandable, clear and obvious decisions and your communication is good, that's a huge part of a referee's performance, basically. And the higher he goes in rugby, the more communication becomes important for him. You know, we all know Wayne Barnes and these type of guys. They're very good communicators, and that's really important for a referee to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of our listeners will be able to relate to that, you know, regardless of what profession they're in, whether it's sports or business, how important communication is. But you know, when you say it, when you describe like that, no more so than refereeing. So yeah, really interesting insight there. So just on the next,
another thing, they're just there on the vision as well. You know, sometimes their vision, it needs to be aligned to where they possibly can go in a season, you know. So if we have a high performance development referee, vision is to do Champions Cup this year, that won't be possible for him. So like goal setting and all that is of course it's important, but sometimes goals can be achieved in a short period of time, and then they're already achieved in the middle of the season, and you got to move them. So I much prefer just moving up the performance all the time in the right direction, and building a base of good performances on top of good performances. And then when you have a tough day at the office, you don't go back too much. It's a learning, right? Okay, what went wrong today? Let's have a look at it. But you've done 5 or 6 matches really well, so that's not going to affect, you know, your next selection, because referees are like players. They're waiting for the next selections to come out, you know, because it reflects their performances, and that's a tough thing to take. Selection is great, non-selection is tough. Being dropped off the Pro 14 panel, or the European panel, or the international panel, they're all realities that happen players, but people forget that they happen referees as well, you know. So it's something that we work on constantly, and we look at where they are, both myself and that individual referee. And because I'm lucky enough that we're all professional, we can look at these week by week, you know, quarter by quarter. We do have a 6-monthly review about where they're going, and that usually happens with myself and the Pro 14 manager in terms of how their performances are going. So it's very much tracked as they go along. It's not just, you know, we'll talk to you at the end of the season. It doesn't really work like that, and it can't work like that. And it's the very same for the players.
Yeah, very, very interesting, and massively insightful into the depth of studies and analysis you do. And I can only imagine it gives the referees every chance to reach, you know, the high performance, and whatever high performance is for them. So the next question I have for you then, Johnny, is a little change in direction, I suppose, and it'd be really interesting to get an insight from you from your own, you know, playing and refereeing career. In terms of reflection, true as a player or a coach or a referee, has reflection been important to you, you know, in development?
Yeah, and I think reflection becomes more important as you get older in your career, because you appreciate a lot more through experience. So for me, and it's very important for a referee to reflect after a match. It's very important to reflect before a match, and I would split that in 2 parts, because the preparation of a match referee to what he's going into, and to reflect on that and what's going to happen in this game, both visually in his head and what the game might present to him on the day. So if 2 teams are very strong in scrum, for example, he's got to reflect on what's going to happen this Saturday in terms of how he's going to deal with these 2 teams going at each other at scrum. So that's one area of the game that our video analyst, John Buckley, we're moving into this year, is that we're going to analyse the strengths and weaknesses of the teams we're refereeing. And then on the Thursday, we'll allow our referees that may be reffing on Friday night or Saturday to have ample time to reflect before they go into the game on what the game might present to them on the night. So if they've had reflected on it, they do a full match prep with themselves, and I would go through the match prep in terms of what they're focusing on going into the game. But the reflection of what might come into them on the day is going to be hugely beneficial to maybe the performance. So that's the reflection before the game for me. Post-game, I would say a couple of things on reflection. Referees are physically fit. That's not what makes a referee tired. A referee has got to make, in an 80-minute game, you know, hundreds of decisions in split seconds. So every breakdown is about 150 to 200 breakdowns, tackle situations in the game. And there could be 7 or 8 penalties at any of those, or it could be play on. So mentally after a match is very tiring for a referee straight afterwards. Physically, they're so fit now, it's not too bad. But it's very hard to sleep after a game, especially a night game. because your brain is still firing on all the stuff that happens. You may have to deal with coaches, and it's usually a bad time to give answers because you've had no time to watch the game, reflect on your performance. They do want the feedback from me pretty quickly, so I would watch the matches live, do my analysis, and have an email off to them an hour after the game with the game analysed for them. And what they would normally do is that they would reflect on my notes, maybe on the flight back from Cardiff or London or Paris or wherever they're coming back from. So they'll review the game, they'll have my notes, and they'll have had a night's rest, and they'll be flying back on the Saturday or the Sunday, and they'll reflect on my notes with their own view of their own performance, and then we can get a more of a balanced, so we can have a proper discussion on the Monday or the Tuesday. So it's not emotional, because players, referees and coaches are quite emotional straight after games in terms of referees will be defensive, maybe coaches and players are upset with some referee decisions. So there's way too much emotion in it for people to actually take the learnings to move on for the following week. So yeah, I hope that gives you an insight into the two sides of reflection, that the post-match and pre-match are very different, but they're very important.
Yeah, really interesting as well in terms of that point you made there about maybe leaving a gap from the end of a game or a scenario to the actual finished product in terms of judgments of where to go forward. I think that's certainly something we can probably be all guilty a little bit of, maybe reflecting too early and then letting that emotional reflection guide us maybe forward, which is certainly interesting, and certainly I think our listeners will get value from.
I think so. And I mean, you know, if you walk into the office after a day's work and someone comes in and said, you know, you were crap at work today, you know, that doesn't really happen, but it does happen in a referee's world. So the immediate temptation is to be defensive, you know, because you're after a tough game out there, and, you know, big crowd out there, whatever, is that you have to be very careful that you just let the whole thing just settle down and reflect on the game with your coach, your mentor, whatever it is, and that will lead to overall better longevity in terms of where you're going. In my opinion, as a referee or a player or a coach, they're very similar in the way we operate in the IRFU, because I've kind of been in all sides of it, coaching and playing and refereeing. So the system is very, very similar. Just like the Leinster, Ulster, Connacht, and Munster players, they will look at the game. The analysts will be doing their job on a Saturday night. The players will walk away from the game and they'll come in for a proper review on Monday morning, you know,
Yeah.
and there'll be time for reflection for them, and we are no different. And we replicate the week in terms of training. You know, the lads will train probably once on Monday. They'll have a meeting with me as well during the day. You know, 3 of them ref or 4 of them ref. Then they will have a double session on a Tuesday and a meeting. They'll be off Wednesday, and then prep day Thursday. If they're refereeing or if they're assistant referee, they will support the referee. And that's where they reflect on the next game that's coming. Because as soon as we get to 6 o'clock on Tuesday, we put the game to bed. Whether it's a great performance, whether it's an okay performance, or where it's a very poor performance where the ref is not happy, the coaches are not happy, I'm not happy, we have to put it to bed, because the next one's coming, and we can't let that leak into the next couple of days, because that will affect the preparation, the reflection on the game that's coming in the following week. So I literally chop it on Tuesday at 5 o'clock. That's it. Take your space, your family time for Wednesday, and be ready to get 9 o'clock on Thursday morning to let's get stuck into the next challenge.
Yeah. I suppose it really is controlling the reflection in terms of you're setting clear standards around giving yourself a break before you actually do it, and then a cut-off point of where it ends. So I know a lot of our guests have talked about the dangers of over-reflection and emotional reflection, and that's, you know, it's really interesting to hear that, you know, that it's reflection can be really powerful, but in your case it needs to be very controlled as well.
It is, and when you have, you know, professional referee would be involved in, you know, 30 to 35 appointments over a 52 weeks a year. So, and Irish referees fly every time they referee abroad. So except they're doing derby matches at home between the provinces, they're on a plane every weekend. So, you know, it's a lot of travel, it's a lot of effort, a lot of prep. So it's very important because they'll just burn out. If we run one into the next one, yeah, even if they're reffing well, so if they have 5 or 6 weeks of reffing really well, but we don't have any kind of downtime or separation, they're going to burn out. And I think that's very important because they're human beings as well, you know, and they need not that they need to be looked after, but they do. You need to care, which I do care about them a lot, on and off the field. You know, we socialize together. We, you know, different things like that where we can, and there's a great team spirit between them all. So, and that's really important in a team environment for our high performance team. That one is a tough day at the office, the others will rally around. You know, or celebrate successes as well as failures. You know that, you know, wrap the guy around with a bit of support when needed. And I suppose that's a part of my job as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of our listeners will be able to relate to that reflection piece and also get a lot of insight into it as well about the importance of control around it. So that brings us nicely then on to our next question, Johnny. In terms of, you know, listeners that might be listening and wondering, you know, it's all well and good knowing these things, but where does the knowledge come from, and how can we maybe understand these kind of topics better? Is there any particular resources that have helped you, you know, throughout your learning journey?
Yeah, of course. We've all read lots of different books and stuff, and I'll give you a couple of them in a minute. But I mean, I must say that the resources for me are around very practical stuff. Sometimes it's the quality of coaches that I would bring in to give us an insight into the latest and different areas of the game. So I suppose I'll give you an example. During the lockdown, came as a shock for everybody, of course. You know, season just stops in February, March, and suddenly we're coming into the business end of the season. So, okay, what resources will be the best? Guys get book recommendations, that's fine. But I needed to get some resources to make sure that the lads' rugby game sense about the technical parts of the game, that we could get those really upskilled in that 7 or 8 week period. So we're very lucky with the work colleagues that I have in the IRFU that are experts in different areas. So Joe Schmidt did a lot of work with the Irish team on the pitch and stuff when I was reffing. So Joe was involved in the breakdown. There's a big change in the breakdown laws in World Rugby at the moment, and Joe was on the group. So Joe came in, did a 2-hour session. We had John Fogarty, our national scrum coach, Felix Jones. We had Andy Farrell come in to talk about defence. Paul O'Connell did line-out maul. So they're all experts, and they're great resources for us to upskill the lads. So we on a Tuesday for the 6 or 7 weeks, I think it was, and we took 1 week off in the middle, that we had a 2-hour session with those wonderful experts in the fields that they're in. And then on Thursday, we reflected on what we learned from those coaches in or around the game, in the hope to make those referees better understanding what's going to happen if the line-out is shortened here, if what type of attack is happening, what type of defence teams are using, just that we utilise those resources. Also, as I mentioned earlier on in the discussion, is that the resource of being able to go in to train with teams, to be able to train at the level that you're refereeing at is wonderful. So we utilise that resource a lot. And then obviously, in terms of coaching, that resource, we tap into different areas of the IRFU that we can. We've communication guys. I had a guy on from South Africa who's a visual agility and brain performance coach. So we got him in. So that was quite interesting. Give the lads some exercises from visual long sight and stuff, and reaction drills that the lads can do. So my resources a lot are very practical, because I believe in practical stuff. A couple of books, Black Box Thinking is one I particularly like. Bill Walsh, The Score Will Take Care of Itself. I believe you sort your own stuff out. Nobody's going to do it for you, and that philosophy. I'm reading one at the moment. I have it here actually. I don't know if people can see that. It's from Nick Winkelman. It's an IRFU colleague of mine who is an expert in the speed, but he talks about the language of coaching, right? And that's something that we work on a lot. He's big on coaching cues, and that would have been something I would have worked on in a previous, when I was in coach development in the IRFU, that we need to get very smart around what we say to players on the field. So from a referee perspective, what cues are you giving the players? Because if they understand the cues and they're relevant, then the players may react in a positive way to the way you're refereeing. So there's just a couple, Peter. Obviously, I'm sure that your other guests had lots of interesting books out there, but I really like the practical side resource, because we need to be better in every area, and the practical side of the resource is certainly, I hope, will bear fruits for us down the track.
Yeah, I think Bill Walsh and Matthew Saeed and these people are great, interesting books, and particularly the one Bill Walsh is one I particularly enjoyed myself as well. And yeah, absolutely, our guests will take great insight there from both the books, but also your insights into practicality. And it seems to be a reoccurring theme with a lot of the guests that are on about, that importance of practicality. And it's funny, recently, I was lucky enough to be involved in a training environment where there was both referees and coaches being trained together. And I was just, I was looking at the power that can actually bring. I know growing up, as a coach or as a player, you wouldn't leave a referee in the front gate, in case, you'd be afraid of what they might do or what they might learn about you. But, it's great now. It's absolutely, brilliant to see what power can come from that cohesive approach.
Yeah, and we 2 weeks ago we were on a call, so it was the 9 referees, the head coaches of all the provinces, and the Irish coaches. We were all on the same call together, discussing the new breakdown that we need to align ourselves to World Rugby and do what the game is required with what they want us to do. So that's no different. That's the coaches, the players, and the referees. We're all in the same boat. We're all in the field together. So. And to be fair, again, the Irish coaches are all really good guys. If you want to ask them a few questions, yeah, we get things wrong sometimes, and they won't be happy with some decisions that are made, and that's absolutely fine too. That's sport, that happens. We understand that, but we just hope that any of our decisions don't affect the outcome of a game. That's the nightmare scenario, probably, if I'm being honest, for a referee, is that you're going to make a mistake or two, but you don't want to make that mistake that you give the wrong penalty and the guy kicks 3 points and the team loses because of it. That's the one you want to avoid.
Yeah, and it sounds like all your structures and all your planning and everything that you have there, is doing its very best to reduce that occurrence. And I think, I certainly think that relationship between players and referees and that constructive criticism that goes on applies to business as well very easily, in terms of you need to have that constructive criticism in business as well as in sport, because accountability is a huge factor in high performance and development. So that's really good to hear. I'm conscious of your time, Johnny, so I'm just going to move on to the last question, if you don't mind. The last one I have for you is a bit of a bombshell one, I think, but hopefully it'll be as insightful, and I'm sure it will be as insightful as some of our other guests. What's the most important thing that you've learned from your career to date?
I suppose from my refereeing career, I suppose, and playing, they're probably different. But as I said, experience teaches you a huge amount, and the way you react to situations as you get more experience. I think that for me, even the amount that I communicated in the match when you were less experienced was a lot more. And then when you get a bit more experience, it's the same in any walk of life. You get more experience, you get more comfortable with it. You're operating at a very high level, but you get comfortable in that level, and then you become more relaxed. And then I think if you put the work in and you put the preparation in, and you have the physical fitness to be able to execute everything, your plans that you want to, that's hugely beneficial for me. and you begin to be more relaxed and more calm out in the pitch. And as a result, you actually start to referee a little bit better as well, because you're not dealing with all the things that are coming at you at, you know, match intensity pace at professional rugby level. I can assure you it is split second. So a tackle and a ball gone away from a tackle, it takes 3 seconds. So the speed of everything that's happening there is hugely important. I think another thing that I've learned, obviously I mentioned it earlier, but to be able to train at the intensity that you're going to be performing at that weekend, whatever it is. So I mentioned the referees going into the teams to referee live scrums, and to actually the practicality of doing your training sessions and not just watching a video going, I'm going to do this, this, and this, because rugby is such a dynamic, multifaceted game and moves in different directions. You never know what to expect. So at a Leinster Munster training session, you get to practice that unexpected. And that's, if you practice that midweek, you're better able to deal with it the weekend. So that's a huge learning that I use that in my refereeing career to be a better referee and understand the game better, because even though you played the game and I was involved in coaching, the game is constantly changing. So no matter who you are, from Joe Schmidt, one of the best coaches in the world, the breakdown is changing now. So we've got to keep upskilling ourselves all the time to be better, and that's the best way that we can actually do that. So I'm passing that on to the next generation, and the guys are embracing that very much to go into the training sessions.
Great, thanks a million, Johnny. Yeah, so look, I'm as I suppose has become a habit now. I'm blown away by the insight that, you know, myself and our listeners can get from talking to the likes of yourself and other guests. And I suppose on that point, I just want to thank you sincerely for coming on board today to support what we're doing. I know, you know, Temple Street will get massive value from it, you know, and hopefully our guests will donate accordingly. But I think our guests themselves listening will get huge value and insight from our conversation today. So look, I just wanted to thank you very much for coming on board, and just let you know we really appreciate it.
Thanks, Peter, and well done to you for a great cause and putting all this together. And I'll certainly be sharing that with all my mates, and hopefully they'll get on the GoFundMe page.
Thanks a million, John. We'll talk to you soon.
All the best.
So that's it for another session of High Performance Reflections. I hope everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. Like always, to access the videos, you can access them free of charge on our YouTube channel. Just search High Performance Reflections. That will bring you to our channel. And also, if you'd like to donate to our very worthy cause of Temple Street Children's University Hospital, you can do that through our GoFundMe page at GoFundMe. You can search again High Performance Reflections, or you can get the link directly on the GoFundMe page or the YouTube channel. So for now, all that's left to say is goodbye. I hope you enjoyed our session, and I'm looking forward to our next session. Take care, everyone.